Hey there, everybody. It is time for another edition of Orange and Blue Today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason. Conversations about Bo Nix continue, Mace. They're there. They're prevalent. Turn on your social networking and you're going to see Chase Daniel, Dan Orlovsky, Kurt Warner, former quarterbacks talking about Bo Nix's footwork.
But Bo Nix says he's not turning on his social media, as he said yesterday.
Right.
He's ignoring that.
I don't think the coaches are ignoring, not social media, but they're not ignoring his footwork.
Well, they're not ignoring it. I think the question is, at least when you bring Chase Daniel into the conversation,
Oh, right.
were there coach conversations with someone like Chase Daniel, who is a former Broncos, or not Broncos, but a former Sean Payton quarterback? That's why his comment certainly raised some eyebrows last week when he was on social media talking about Bo Nix. And certainly when you see even other quarterbacks who are looking at Bo Nix and they're seeing the issues, it's cause for concern, right?
Right. I mean, chuckleheads in the media like us, we can say stuff, but when Kurt Warner says something, I mean, we all need to be listening. Chase Daniel, because you mentioned that time with Sean Payton, and all of these guys seem to have a similar chorus, watching independently and then coming to the conclusion that Bo Nix abandons plays too soon and his footwork is poor.
It's a mess. I mean, look, as I'll say time and again, you have to throw off platform, off balance sometimes, and you can't succeed as an NFL quarterback without those off-platform throws where your feet aren't going to be set. And you're going to see a quarterback coming in from Kansas City on Sunday who has redefined how to succeed with off-platform throws. But the concern with Bo Nix is that he's not throwing with proper footwork when you should have proper footwork. He's getting a clean pocket quite often, and still the footwork is not what you'd like it to be. The interesting thing, Cease, is he spent time working on it last year, and he's talked about this. He talked about this in OTAs, that he went through a period of time early last season working on it. And he said, and I asked him about this during OTAs, and he said that one of the things that he liked as he was getting into year two was that he'd advanced to a point where he wasn't having to think about both his footwork and having to spit out the wordy play call in the huddle. And because of that, he was able to focus on things like reading a defense pre-snap and diagnosing what to do from there. Well, I think it's pretty clear that the footwork has regressed a bit, and one could say probably it's going back to some ingrained behavior, going back to some things that frankly you can get away with at Auburn and Oregon that you can't get away with in the NFL, because if you have footwork that isn't quite as clean and it affects your accuracy, you've got margin for error in college that does not exist in the NFL.
Right.
And so he thought, I think maybe he thought he had it licked, and now if he has to go back and work on that, does it mean, okay, he's going to be thinking about that again, and then his mind isn't going to be as free to think about other things pre-snap as he talked about back 5.5 months ago? I mean, that sort of brings another layer into the conversation here.
Mm-hmm. And that was off your question, Mace. OTAs.
Yeah.
So I remember that.
Yeah.
And I liked the answer at the time of like,
I did
wow,
too.
Now he doesn't have to think about his feet. And then now I'm like, I wish he would think about his feet a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's it also is a reminder, how often do we say this? Quarterback development is never a straight incline. It has bumps and it has peaks and valleys along the way, and there are sometimes it is one step forward, two steps back, and then you hope that after the two steps back there are 3 or 4 steps forward. Like that's, and maybe what we're in a period of time where we're talking about one of the 2 steps backward, that hopefully for the Broncos what follows this is a leap forward after this moment. And I think, whether you're going by the film or you're going by the numbers, whichever one you prefer, or the marriage of both, whichever one you prefer, objectively, Bo Nix at this moment is in a, you want to call it a regression. Maybe you view it economically and say, right now, it's a bit of a recession in terms of where things are going in terms of his progress.
Yeah, a little bit of a dip.
Yeah.
You mentioned Mahomes. We're going to play the Joe Lombardi answer about, this topic, basically. Is it wrong-headed? And I'm not saying Bo's doing this, and I'm not saying the Broncos are doing this. But is it wrong-headed to look at Mahomes? Isn't he more of a one-of-one guy? Because there's a lot of young QBs, and listen, Dylan Raiola's out there playing for Nebraska doing the same thing. So it's like, okay, he can do that. He can throw off platform all the time. He can have weird arm angles all the time. It's really nothing John Elway didn't do in the 80s, but I'm an old head, Mace. But, isn't it maybe wrong for young quarterbacks, not Bo and not the Broncos, but isn't it wrong to be like, I can do what Mahomes does? No, do it the way most everyone's done it, the successful ones, for years.
To quote George Costanza, it's like going to Pavarotti and saying, teach me to sing.
Ooh, it's perfect.
Yeah, I'd say that. I mean, sometimes you just can't. It has to be, a workable example. I recall Chris Harris Jr. talking about, for example, what he could learn from Champ Bailey, and realizing there were some things that he could get from Champ in terms of how he studied, but realizing that Champ had some significant talent and physical gifts that Chris didn't have. And okay, I can get some things from Champ, but there are some things I just can't take because he has some natural abilities about him, some clubs in his bag that I just don't possess, and I've got to reach my success another way. So I feel that way sometimes about Patrick Mahomes, that you can take some things, but there are plenty of things about Patrick Mahomes that are one of one, sort of okay, Michael Jordan is one of one, right? You can't look at him and say, oh, I'm going to replicate that. And yet, no way, no way at all.
Yeah, and that's why, and I'd thought of this for a while, Mace, of okay, how do I ask to get a good answer from Joe Lombardi or even from Bo?
Yeah.
And I was gonna I thought about asking Sean this exact question yesterday, but I was like, okay, if I preface it by saying, Chase Daniel, Kurt Warner, this isn't my opinion. Chucklehead, right? Chucklehead, media scout, whatever you want to call me. I'm fine. I got big shoulders, but I wanted to preface it to Joe Lombardi to be okay, Kurt Warner's a Hall of Famer, right? You've got Hall of Fame quarterbacks who are, very kind in their assessments, but very true and real. They're not attached to the Broncos, at least, Kurt Warner isn't. When these guys are talking about feet, is it something that it's just, hey, a quarterback's always got to, work on his feet, think about his feet, stuff like that? I wanted to know from Joe Lombardi. I don't know about you, Mace, but I thought he gave a hell of an answer.
Yep. Here's Joe Lombardi answering your question.
It's always a tricky thing. I think the guy that we're playing this week, Mahomes, he's changed maybe the perception of the position where it's, he throws so much off platform and has so much success. And so there's a fine line you have to walk there. There are times where you're like, man, I wish the quarterback would have kept his base and been in a better position to throw, and then the next snap, he's off running for a 20-yard gain. And so it's definitely something that you have to work on, and just having that experience of like, man, I can anticipate this route's about to come open, so I'm going to stay in my base and climb, versus, man, I don't know where I'm going with this ball. I got to start moving in a way that gives me a chance to scramble. And then having the physical ability that, something popped I didn't anticipate, and being able to throw off platform. So there's a lot that goes into it. Being around Drew for as long as I was, I appreciate what those guys are saying. But I also understand that each player is unique, and, it's dialing it in where, you have the right footwork for the right situation is something that comes with experience.
Dude, that's the key word, and he said it twice, and maybe some won't pick up on it. And honestly, I didn't pick up on it the first answer, but listening to that a second time, it's experience. Bo Nix is abandoning plays too soon because he hadn't seen what he's looking at yet. But what do we know about Bo? Being that supercomputer. He's not a mistake repeater. It's not to say he won't make some mistakes twice, but once he sees it, he can process it. And I'm sure over the week they're coaching him of like, hey, this is what they showed you, and that's why, you shouldn't have left. You should have stayed with this route or whatever. Like, I think it's experience. I think Lombardi hit it right on the head.
And he's at game 28.
Right.
So he's still seeing things for the first time.
Yes. We need to keep that in mind.
Yeah. So we're still at the point where he's not a rookie, but there are still new things being tossed at him. And that being said, there are new things being tossed at him, but he's also in that period of time where there is a book on him. So it's that point where there's enough to where teams know how to play him, but they can still throw some wrinkles at him that he hasn't seen. And how does he adjust? How do they adjust? Now, one thing that is interesting though is that they can throw things at him, but you talk about, okay, he doesn't make the same mistake twice. Perhaps this is also something that plays into how he gets better over the course of a game, because
right.
And yeah, the Raiders game was an exception to that, but most often he's playing better ball in the fourth quarter than he is in the first quarter. So kind of what's going into that? Like is it just Bo being clutch, or is it something to him learning, processing, and then adapting and applying? I mean, I'd say, as I think about it, I think some of it is clutch and being steely under pressure, but I think there's something to his adaptability as well. Now, it depends who you ask. Now, Joe Lombardi had an interesting answer when he actually talked about getting Bo some early completions and kind of the impact of that, because the answer, it frankly was a little bit of both, because he talked about sort of the value of getting Bo kind of into a groove with getting him on rhythm early, but then he got into a tangent where he talked about from using a perspective coming from the opposite sideline through Lil'Jordan Humphrey, who was with the Giants and is now with the Broncos. Lil'Jordan's perspective that he was conveying to his then teammates about how they need to be on point start to finish against a Sean Payton team. Here's Joe Lombardi's response and his thoughts on all that.
I think everyone's completions help get you in a rhythm. And so finding completions early, then everyone reacts to it different. And, I think we've seen from Bo, there have been, games where we've struggled offensively early, and then, all of a sudden he finds a way to turn it on. And, do what we have to do in the fourth quarter or the second half or whenever we need it, whatever we need to win a game, he finds a way. So he's resilient that way. And, I think there's a lot of belief that we'll find a way regardless of how it starts. And it doesn't mean we want to start slow, but, it's funny listening to, we got LJ back, and he said when he was on the sideline when we were down against New York and they were acting very confident. He was like, guys, you don't know what's going on over there. Those guys don't care. They're going to keep playing hard and do not let up. Do not expect this thing to be easy the whole way. So, LJ had that feeling just being here last year. And so, I think it's something that's real.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's a great story.
So to me, it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of the resolve that's not just Bo, but the entire team. But it's a little bit of the adjustment that Bo Nix has as well. But would it be nice to see him kind of get in a rhythm earlier and get the Broncos out of this pattern? Yeah, it would, especially because, again, bubbling beneath the surface of all this, you're 8-2 and you're feeling good about that. You have, after multiple games, you have the offensive players continuing to say that this can't keep happening. This isn't sustainable. They're very realistic about how, if they want to get to the place of their aspirations, that the place they believe they can go, that they have believed since they arrived for those first meetings back in July, a place that they believe they're good enough to make it to, and that's the Super Bowl, that it will not be with this current style of winning persisting. Like, that if it continues to be like this, there's an expiration date, and that expiration date is before February. Simple as that. That they have to polish things up and figure things out. And you want to, that's where you want to have the point where that's where a loss or two may not be the worst thing for this team in terms of achieving their long-term goals, as you and I have discussed.
Yeah, reset it, taste it, hate the taste, and get better because of it. It's Orange and Blue today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason. We're going to hear a word from our sponsor and get to some injury reports, some defensive talk. That's coming up after this from RamosLaw.com.
Today's episode of Orange and Blue Today is presented by Ramos Law, the official injury law firm partner of the Denver Broncos. Ramos Law was founded by Dr. Joseph Ramos, an attorney and ER doctor, to provide exceptional care to those injured in accidents. With a unique understanding of both medicine and law, the Ramos Law team is built to fight for you every step of the way. Experience the Ramos Law difference. Contact them today at RamosLaw.com.
All right, Mace, we got an interesting Thursday injury report, including the Chiefs having Xavier Worthy, speedster, 4.2 speed. VJ talked about it today at the podium. Like, they've got guys that can fly. Well, one of them now a little bit banged up in Xavier Worthy, maybe more Hollywood Brown because of it. But, yeah, we're monitoring this on both sides, both Chiefs and Broncos here.
With great interest, Xavier Worthy landing on the injury report today. So he was not on the injury report Thursday, but he is there, or Wednesday, pardon me, but he is there today, Thursday, as we record this. If you're watching this on Friday, he's there with an ankle injury and was listed as having limited practice on Thursday. So that's something that you want to pay attention to on Friday. George Karlaftis with a thumb injury has been limited each of the first 2 days in Kansas City. Isaiah Pacheco, knee injury, DNP both Wednesday and Thursday. So that would basically trend toward Isaiah Pacheco not playing. And for the Broncos, 5 of the 6 players who were DNP on Wednesday were also DNP Thursday. And that's Nate Adkins, J.K. Dobbins, Jonah Ellis, Alex Singleton, and Pat Surtain. Nate Adkins actually was out there for stretching, Cease. He had a helmet on, but then he went over to the side field. So that tells you he's coming along, making progress, but not quite there. Garrett Wallow, his second straight day practicing, he was brought back Wednesday. They started the clock on his return from injured reserve. So quite possible with 2 full days of practice ceased that Garrett Wallow may be available Sunday to provide depth with Alex Singleton missing this game while he recuperates from the surgery that he had last Friday. Of course, Justin Sternad and Dre Greenlaw starting, Garrett Wallow there to provide depth, and then you probably get your other depth piece from presumably from the practice squad, either Jordan Turner or Lavelle Bailey, with, of course, Corrine Reed going on injured reserve with a hamstring issue. But J.K. Dobbins, the big thing there, J.K. Dobbins not practicing for a second straight day. And basically, Sean Payton telegraphed it Wednesday when he said R.J. Harvey's going to get more work in this game. So, he didn't want to talk a lot about J.K. Dobbins, but he said R.J. Harvey's going to get more work. And like you mentioned, unprompted, he said Jaleel McLaughlin. So I think it's pretty obvious where this is going at running back, that we're not going to see J.K. Dobbins. And I think the question now is simply going to be, are we talking about J.K. Dobbins going on injured reserve on Saturday or not? That I think is the only outstanding question here as we head into the weekend regarding Dobbins.
Yep. We will put a pin in that and see what happens there. The JFM thing, the back, it's Thursday, it's an ad. You're like, okay. And back injuries, I never really like to see, but, some conditioning, some treatment to it, and get back out there.
Yeah, and he was limited. We actually saw him at the start of practice. He wasn't doing individual period work, but he was out there with his teammates watching. So we're taking attendance. We see him. We don't see him with the helmet. So he's out there just kind of watching. And so limited means at some point he got out there and took part. So that's not a bad sign. And another good sign is that JFM was doing media interviews on Wednesday. If there's a real concern, usually they don't have them doing much of anything. Of course, again, he was added today, but at the same time, he was out there with his teammates. And then even though he was not doing the individual work, he was out there. So that seems to me more like a kind of a maintenance type of thing for JFM. Trent Sherfield, by the way, did practice. He was DMP Wednesday, full practice Thursday. And so that's significant, Cease, because to follow up on our conversation Wednesday, it would tell me that Lil'Jordan Humphrey is not on this team to take snaps from a wide receiver.
Okay.
Because if Trent Sherfield were injured, if he were DNP on Thursday, you could say, okay, DNP 2 days. Part of it is, all right, Trent Sherfield's injured. Maybe part of the reason he's here is because you need to bolster that area and you need somebody who knows what he's doing, has been around, knows the playbook, yada, yada, yada. We know Lil'Jordan Humphrey late last year, even in the offseason, was considering, was saying, hey, I'll go to tight end if I have to. Like, he talked about that, right?
Yeah.
So that, I think, lends credence to the hypothesis you had yesterday about him getting some tight end type of reps.
I'd love to see it.
Yes. That's something to keep an eye on, I would say, as a potential possibility. Mercedes Lewis played a couple of games. There's only one practice squad elevation left for him, but he had the penalties last week. Can't be happy with that, right? And Evan Ingram talked about it. High drop rate. Can't be happy with that. So, anyway, just food for thought, I would say, as to Lil'Jordan Humphrey being back If you love someone, set him free. If he comes back, it was meant to be.
And he's
Lil'Jordan
here.
Humphrey is back.
And Sean's so happy.
You think Sean's walking around the building with a little extra spring in his step because Lil'Jordan Humphrey is back?
Yeah. That's why I had to ask Coach Rizzi about it today. I'm like, hey, Sean, how happy was Sean? He's got to be real happy.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's trust, right?
Yeah.
You can trust if there's a screen. Listen, full disclosure, this team's terrible at screens. But now with more Lil'Jordan Humphrey, is that the screen fixer? You know what I mean? Like I'm willing to take a look at it. They're not going to go away from screens.
Yeah.
It's not like you're ever going to take that play out of the playbook. You just need to execute it better. And maybe LJH, no matter where he's lining up, can help spring somebody on a screen pass.
Yeah, they're never going to go away from screens. Sean Payton likes screens. It's like Sean Payton likes his situational substitution, likes to bring in the right personnel as he deems it for each play. And Sean Payton likes the screen passes. It is what it is.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere. Maybe it's just better now with Lil'Jordan Humphrey playing out there. So we'll see. We'll see, Mace. Feeling good, though. Feeling good on a Thursday. Attitude is good. This team, I like what Vance Joseph said. You know, it's on Mahomes and Andy Reid to figure out, like, okay, what's this defense going to have for you? And it's not all about last year. VJ was asked about that. You know, hey, last year. And he's like, no, I look at the last month. What am I doing? What am I calling? It's on now with a couple of games without PS2. It's on those guys to figure it out. And if we talk about must win, which you and I don't do on this show, but the chat room was saying, hey, how about a must win for KC? You want to win the AFC West? You better get this one, Kansas City. And if you want to keep your lead, you better win Denver.
It is a must win for Kansas City.
Yeah.
And, you know, to use the Sean Payton parlance, I mean, you got your your must-haves and your needs and your wants, right? Like, this one's a must-have for Kansas City. Otherwise, if they don't get this game, they are basically just playing for a wild card. That's it. Mm-hmm. So, well, you know, what are they going to do? So,
also, I don't think they would ever do this, Mace, ever. So I'm only saying it as it's reality. But the Colts game is after the Broncos. For Kansas City, you have 2 weeks of torment coming up because you have to face the Broncos defense, and then you have to face the guy you should have drafted in the first round. Sorry, Pat Mahomes, you're not a scout. You should have drafted Jonathan Taylor. You're gonna have to take that guy down. So I got a couple week gauntlet here.
Yeah, I maintain that if they had drafted Jonathan Taylor instead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the Chiefs would have at least one more Super Bowl ring.
And, dude, I'll take it a little bit further because I'm emotional and opinionated.
Yeah.
They might have an undefeated season.
Ooh.
That's how flippin' good Jonathan Taylor is.
Yeah. That was a mistake. Going to that
it was right there in front of him.
Going to that 2020 draft, there was only one player that I feared the Chiefs taking from a Broncos perspective, and that was Jonathan Taylor. And part of it was having watched him at Wisconsin, I knew he could catch the ball as well as run. I knew he had receiving skills. I knew he had that club in his bag. So I thought he would fit what they did. It reminded me of a pick 2 decades earlier, very similar, a team coming off a Super Bowl win. The Rams coming off the Super Bowl, they won Greatest Show on Turf. They picked Trung Candidate.
Arizona.
Yes. Another gadgety type of back. And I thought that pick was cute, and I thought the Edwards-Helaire pick was cute, especially when Jonathan Taylor was on the board. I like you said, it was the guy Mahomes wanted. Well, I'm sorry, that's where you're like, let the scouts do their job. The Broncos, remember when they brought Russell Wilson in to look at film of a player?
Oh, Mace, you're serving it up for me. Here's the lob.
And they brought him in. It was on Montreal, Washington, right?
And Russell Wilson said, "Man, I like this guy. We should get this guy."
That's an open wound for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm okay.
I mean, they,
the trunk candidate thing. You know what's even more egregious?
Yeah.
Let's go off the rails, Mace. Let's do it.
Sure.
They had Marshall Faulk. And
That's
always
what I mean.
remember-
It was like a complete. It was just a bizarre pick.
And with trunk candidate, he was so fast, 4.2 speed.
Yeah.
And watch Marshall Faulk. He was more like a 4.4 guy. But when Faulk would cut, it was like one step and cut. And trunk candidate was so fast that when he would cut, he would go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then cut. Because he was too fast. He had to throttle down just to move.
Yeah.
But it didn't work. Well, it was Mike Martz. So like it didn't work. He, didn't last. And they ended up with Steven Jackson later, but still.
It was one of those moments that sort of like was kind of the beginning of the end for the Rams. I mean, they could have picked a guy like Darren Howard, who went 2 picks later to the Saints, who became a pretty good pass rusher in the league. Like, I mean, that, a guy who went several picks later, who had a very good career for the Broncos, mostly was Ian Gold. Like, I mean, these are, guys that they could have had like right then and there. Like, Mike Brown, who had a pretty solid career as a defensive back. Like, these are, those would have been less sexy picks, but they would have made more sense for the Rams at the time. But they just, again, it was like they saw 4.2 speed on that turf in St. Louis. And they're like, we got to get us some of that. And it was like, no, like, you know how many games he played as a rookie? 3.
I was going to say 4.
Yeah.
How many years did he play? He wasn't in the league very long.
He played 4 years, 3 in St. Louis. You want to know how many yards from scrimmage he had in St. Louis?
In the
I looked
total?
it up. Yeah.
3-year total? I would guess, let me guess, 300 yards.
684.
Okay. But still, that's 200 yards a year for a first-round pick.
Yeah. Like,
where was his 4th year then? Where did he go?
Washington. Steve Spurrier brought him in.
Oh, okay.
That was where he had his best season.
I don't remember trunk candidate in Washington.
Yeah,
so.
he actually was halfway decent in Washington. On a Spurrier's second team, which was bad. They went 5-11.
Wow. Okay. I'm gonna have to look at my old football cards.
A weird year for Washington, because they actually started off well. They were 3-1. Like, they beat the Patriots. The Patriots who won a Super Bowl that year. Washington beat the Pats and they were 3-1 after 4 games with Steve Spurrier as head coach, and then the bottom just completely fell out on them, and they went 5-11. And then after that, Dan Snyder moved on to Joe Gibbs, like who moderately won, had a couple of playoff seasons, but it's basically, here's the thing: Joe Gibbs won 3 Super Bowls with great ownership in Washington in the 80s and early 90s. Joe Gibbs with terrible ownership in the 2000s may have done a better job coaching just to get to the playoffs twice, because he had the hindrance of Daniel Snyder as his owner. Strangely enough, he never, he still stayed in touch with Snyder over the years. And actually, Joe Gibbs was the one who finally got Dan Snyder to accept the sale of the team. Like, I don't know if you've read this, but Snyder, up until the last moment, was threatening to not go through with the sale of the team to Josh Harris and his group.
Yep.
It's like wild. That sale almost didn't happen. Snyder almost nixed it at the last minute. And Joe Gibbs was apparently the person who finally convinced him to go through with it. To do it. That he had to do it. So, man.
Fantastic.
Anyway, and how do we? And we went off the rails, but that's okay.
The end of the show.
Yeah, well, that's what we do. Like, at the end of the show, you can go off the rails. But Joe Gibbs is a top 5 all-time coach for me.
Well, and the point, bringing it back to the Broncos, it's ownership.
Yes, ownership.
When you
Ownership
have
matters.
ownership. Oh my God, it's gonna happen, everybody. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, this ownership group will win a Super Bowl. Like,
Oh yeah.
I don't know if it'll win with this coach. Like, that's the thing. We'll see. We're fixing to find out. But the Walton Penner group, they will win a Super Bowl. The only variable is time. But they will win a Super Bowl. It will happen. It's just, will it be this year? Will it be next year? Will it be 10 years from now? I don't know. But they will win a Super Bowl. That I would bet an awful, I'm not a betting person, but I would bet an awful lot of money on that they will win a Super Bowl. I think that is a virtual guarantee that they will win a Super Bowl at some point. Because and that's the thing, that's you look around, like the great ownership groups eventually they figure it out. I mean, it's not like they have a chance every year, because some years you just don't have the team, right? I mean, you can have terrific ownership, and some years, or even some periods of years, you just don't have it. You don't have the quarterback. You don't have the coach. You don't have this, that, and the other. I mean, Tampa Bay is one of those teams, for example, that clearly has ownership and an organization that can win it all. Like, they've done it twice with this ownership group in 30 years. Like, they've got the infrastructure to where they're one of those teams that can win it all. But they didn't have the right coach. They didn't have the right quarterback for a while. They had about a decade where they stunk. It didn't mean it was a bad organization. They just didn't have, but they just missed. And that's the thing. You may have, with the Walton Penner group, you may have a few years where the team struggles. Doesn't mean the team has bad ownership. It just means that, okay, that you're going through a down patch. And there probably will be at some point a down patch on the field with the Walton Penner group. But that happens. I mean, there with Pat Bowlen, you had, about 06 through 2010, you had a down patch with Pat Bowlen. It'll happen at some point. But you still have quality ownership there. Hey, New England has quality ownership with Robert Kraft. What just happened in the last 5 seasons, right? They had their down patch. Did not mean that it wasn't a well-run organization. It wasn't one of the better organizations in the NFL, but they had a down stretch. It'll happen, but it doesn't mean that the Broncos. It won't. When it happens for the Broncos, it won't mean the Broncos aren't one of the better run organizations in football.
They won't stay there.
Right, that's the thing.
I think that's with good ownership. They know better, because it's the culture that they've built. We're really having a culture conversation. That's what it is. And it's the fact that when you're down, you know how to get back up.
Yeah. I mean, even though it's an interesting situation, because it's a team that doesn't necessarily, right now, it doesn't have a pure owner, like a traditional owner, because it's in a trust. But Seattle's probably a really good example of that. Of course, Paul Allen passed away 7 years ago, and they had some years that were good but not great. But organizationally, they're still doing. They didn't lose their way, right? They didn't lose their focus. They didn't lose their philosophy, and it never got out. It never got out of hand there when they were struggling. Right? They didn't lose track of who they were, what they were as an organization. And now look at them. Like, they just had to had to tweak some things. It was time, when it was time to move on from Pete Carroll, they moved on from Pete Carroll, and now look at them. Like, they're right. basically right back where they used to be. And there wasn't that moment for Seattle where their fans lost hope. It's probably, a similar moment's probably going to happen for the Rams when Matthew Stafford retires. And that's probably coming. I'd guess that's probably coming here in the next couple of years, wouldn't you think? I mean,
He's already talked about it.
Yeah, like that's coming pretty soon. That's
In
probably
fact,
coming
if they
pretty
won
soon.
it this year, he might walk
Yeah,
away.
I could see him doing an Elway if they retire, and being like, "I'm out."
You know what's funny, Mace?
He could he could do an Elway or Manning this year. Like that's something to keep an eye on. Like he wins it all and says, "I'm done." Say
You
it.
know
Go
what's
ahead.
funny
Cecil.
about
Yeah.
Matthew Stafford?
Yeah.
He just got above 500 in the NFL this last week.
Yeah, and and he had to, and you know why he had to dig out of that hole? Because
Bad ownership.
well, and here's the thing with him. That club he was with has gone from bad ownership to great ownership just by changing generations. Because when he got there, it was still William Clay Ford, and he didn't know what he was doing. And like when it was his generation and his son, like they didn't have a clue. Now with Sheila Ford Hamp, it's gone. They are now one of the better run organizations in the NFL.
Now do Indy. That's dangerous, dude.
Every sign of Indianapolis is that they're becoming one of those teams up here. Like that they're becoming one of those here.
Yep.
And that's actually kind of become a stair-step process over the generations that, like, with Bob Irsay, they were down here. With Jim Irsay, they were here, and with Peyton Manning kind of brought them up here. Mm-hmm. And that now with Jim Irsay's daughters, that they may be going up here. Like that there may have been this 3-generational process to take them from the bottom to the top.
Can I ask you a favor, Mace?
Yeah.
Now do Walker Montfort.
What you're hoping,
really?
what you're hoping with Walker Montfort is very similar to what you see with the Colts. Is that you have a generation that learned from the generation before. Another example from another sport would be the Wirtz family that owns the Blackhawks.
Okay.
Now, like, Bill Wirtz was a terrible owner, okay? And, like, for years, for example, Blackhawks home games were not televised in Chicago.
What?
Yes, because they thought it would. Yeah, they thought would affect the people coming out. Even though the games would sell out, they wouldn't be on television. It was like ridiculous. You know what Bill Wirtz's nickname was because he was so cheap?
What?
Dollar Bill.
Ha!
Okay. All right.
Dollar Bill.
All right. Then in 2007, Rocky Wirtz, who sadly passed away a couple of years ago, Rocky Wirtz took over. Rocky, what you're hoping with Walker Montfort, Rocky learned what not to do in terms of owning the team. One of the first things that Rocky did was we're going to be like every other team. We're going to put every other team in the NHL. Our games, everyone can watch. Our games are on television now. Like, period. Like, it was one of the most ridiculous things that you couldn't watch their home games for years, like, weren't on television. And lo and behold, and the Blackhawks go from a team at that point in 2007. Their last Stanley Cup win was in 1961. Okay, they'd been forever. They win 3 Stanley Cups in the next decade. Like, the transformation was nearly immediate as far as the culture, everything going right. I mean, now they're in a rebuilding cycle, but there isn't there's hope. There's hope in the fan base that didn't exist, say 20 years ago, like when they were just thought of as being run by incompetence. But again, it was when it changes from one generation to the next, quite often, and we saw this with the Lions too. Quite often, and even Jim Irsay, Jim was so much better than his father. Like Jim Irsay, he learned how to treat your community by seeing what his dad did and saying, I'm not going to do that. Jim Irsay effectively got a state funeral in Indiana by being this, he had his demons, of course, he had struggled with addiction, all that. Jim Irsay became beloved in Indiana by basically doing the opposite of what Bob Irsay did with Baltimore, where he was reviled and eventually left in the middle of the night.
Mayflower trucks.
Yes. One of the most infamous sights in the history of this league is the Mayflower trucks pulling away from the Colts facility in Owings Mills, Maryland, on a snowy March night in 1984 in the middle of the night. Like, just packing everything up and leaving. It's one of the most disgusting things that's ever happened in the history of this league. And then the next day, when the team gets to Indianapolis and they're at the then Hoosier Dome and they have the celebration that we finally got our football team. Irsay gets up there and says, I want you to know something. It's not your team. It's not your ball team. It's my team. It's my family's team. I own it. I mean, yeah, what a guy this is. Like, to his credit, Jim was the exact opposite of his father in a lot of ways. And thus, the Colts became in Indianapolis what they should have been in Baltimore. What they were in Baltimore. I mean, they were a beloved team in Baltimore. And it's still sort of, to this day, it still kind of kills me that they are the Indianapolis Colts, because Colts for Baltimore was such a beautiful name, because it was they were named, horse racing is huge in Maryland. It's even, the Preakness Stakes and all that. Colts doesn't really fit in Indiana, but is what it is. But Jim was determined to not make the same mistakes with Indianapolis that his dad did with Baltimore. That was to him, that was like a family sin. That was a stain on their name. And
he worked to correct it. Right?
And he did. He very much did. Like, he could, basically, it's like, I can't fix what my dad did to Baltimore.
Right.
But I can do my best to make sure that we won't repeat this in Indiana. And it's and I think it showed in that when he passed, when Bob Irsay passed, it was, you read the obituaries on him, and they're very kind of by the, they're rote, they're by the book, etc. When Jim Irsay passed, it's tributes. And like I said, his funeral goes through the streets of downtown Indianapolis, and people turn out and watch the procession and all that. Like, he built something there and made a connection that people in that city, in that state, cared about. Like, and it's what sports can be. Like, it can be more than just a team. It can be a community. Ideally, it's a community rallying point. And, he was certainly he had his issues, and he was he's very human. Like, he's flawed. We're all flawed, right? He did a very good job, basically setting his three daughters up to take over the organization. They each run different parts of the club. kind of they each oversee different aspects of it. I mean, the one we see most is Carly Ursay Gordon, because we see her on the sidelines because she is overseeing football, and we see her like with her notepad,
Got the headset on, got
the headset and the
notepad.
notepad.
Yeah.
I love that. Like, if you're gonna run football, you need to know what's going on. Like, you know what's going on. Like, and she has put the effort in over the last decade plus to make sure that she knows everything about what's going on. And I think also that that's a huge reason why that they're 8-2 right now. And we talked about this in the offseason a little bit, because you and I talked about the Colts and said this might be a team. This is an interesting team to watch because it's a very talented roster. The question is quarterback. You and I even looked at that Colts game in week 2 and said this is a sneaky tough game, and it turned out to be.
It was,
right? And I mean, we don't get all of our picks right, but we nailed that one. And it turned out that roster that was indeed super talented, that had a quarterback question, that quarterback just proved that if he's surrounded with talent, that he can actually be pretty good. He may not be able to elevate others, but if the roster elevates him, that he can hit his marks and be successful. But I don't think you can discount the accountability factor, the fact that a few weeks after Jim Irsay passed, when his daughters met the media, it's a fascinating press conference because they make it clear that this year was basically a kind of a 1-year trial for everybody. Like, the feet were to the fire this year for everyone in that organization. Like, the screws were turned on everybody that to produce, or we're gonna make some changes here. And sometimes you just need that little pressure, a little prod, a little bit accountability. And the response to that sort of prod has been a team that is a legitimate Super Bowl contender, and a team that decided at the trade deadline that, hey, we're going to go for it. We're going to take that extra step, and we're going to bring in Sauce Gardner, even though it costs 2 first-round picks, and truly prove the game is afoot in the AFC. They're a legit Super Bowl contender. The Broncos are a legit Super Bowl contender. The Patriots are a legit Super Bowl contender. And you can also say the Chiefs, even the Chiefs are out of the playoff mix right now. And the Broncos have a chance to bury them. But it's a fun race right now in the AFC.
It's a fascinating league.
Yeah,
Baltimore's out of the playoff picture, and they could be the best team.
The one thing I've got to see more from their defense. That's the thing. Like, I'm not sold on Baltimore.
Out there, for whatever reason, the defense plays better. It's weird.
Yeah, I know. I'm still not sold on Baltimore's D. But if Baltimore can be a passable D, then they are dangerous. Kansas City, I think the big test is Sunday. I will call the Chiefs a contender if they win Sunday. Okay? The Chargers, I'm not sure I can call them a contender because I can't see a Spanish organization winning a Super Bowl.
And without Joe Alt, we've seen it before.
And Slater. They're without 2 tackles now.
Right, Which has crushed most every team.
Yeah, I can't see that holding up. And Buffalo, nobody plays with their food like the Buffalo Bills.
They need to get rid of Sean McDermott.
I think Sean, and I like Sean a lot. I think Sean's taken that team as far as he can. They are at, yeah, exactly. They are at their John Fox, Gary Kubiak moment. Mm-hmm. And who's that guy? Who do they bring in to take?
Well,
who
the Gary Kubiak is. This sets up perfectly, Mace. The Gary Kubiak for Buffalo is Brian Dable.
Mm.
He made Josh, right?
Yeah.
He's less likable than Gary Kubiak because we love Gary on the kick drum. But, like, if you say, who's Buffalo's Gary Kubiak, it's Brian Dable, who's now available.
Yeah, ooh,
Heard he needs something to do.
That's really interesting.
Mace, may I say something that I may have never said before?
Oh no, what?
It's a treat listening to you talk about ball, even if it's
Thank you.
baseball or hockey ball.
How many people did we lose while I was on that soliloquy? Oh
It's
my
all
gosh,
real.
we're at 12:44.
Yeah, it's all real. It's all real. We're
Oh my
a
gosh.
little overtime. We can't do this every day. Trust me. With what Mason and I, it's like spinning plates sometimes, and
Yeah.
we appreciate everyone for sticking in there with us because we go through a lot.
I appreciate you agreeing with me on the Colts becoming one of those
Oh,
up
yeah.
there teams with ownership. Like
for
they
sure.
are, like
They're right there.
they are. Yeah,
Thank God the Broncos are too.
yeah.
There you go.
It's easy. Like you know it when certain things are, you know it when you see it. You know a well-run team when you see it. The Colts are a well-run team.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. We like to be a well-run show and well-run YouTube channel, and that's where you all come in to help us out here on Orange and Blue Today on our Denver Sports YouTube channel. Mace, how can folks do that?
Like,
Comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell.
ding, so that you
Never
miss
miss
vid. That's right. He is Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying OBT's BFD. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned, and would you please stay frosty?